There's a moment in everyone's life when they stop asking for permission and start listening to that quiet inner voice that's been whispering for years. It's the moment you finally trust yourself. Most people never get there. They live their lives waiting for validation, waiting for someone to say you're doing the right thing, you're good enough, or you're ready. But the truth is, no one can give you that permission slip. The only person who can decide that you're enough is you. Self-trust is not arrogance, it's alignment. It's the courage to believe your instincts before you have proof. Every time you second-guess your choices, you weaken the bridge between your intuition and your action. Every time you say, maybe later, when your heart says, now, you teach your brain that your voice doesn't matter. Over time, that becomes a habit. You start outsourcing your decisions, asking friends, scrolling for advice, watching what everyone else does, until you forget what your own opinion sounds like. That's why so many people feel lost, not because they don't know who they are, but because they've stopped listening to themselves. When you finally begin to rebuild that trust, everything changes. You stop chasing clarity from other people and start creating it from within. You stop trying to predict every outcome and start living in alignment with what feels honest. And when that happens, confidence stops being something you perform, it becomes something you are. So how do we lose self-trust in the first place? It often begins early. As children, we're taught to obey, to follow rules, to please authority. Those lessons help us survive society, but they also train us to override instinct. You knew when you were tired, when you were curious, when you needed space, but someone said, not now, or be realistic, or don't be difficult. Slowly, you learn to silence that internal compass. By adulthood, that silence becomes normal. You look outside yourself for cues. Is this acceptable? Is this safe? Is this impressive? But deep down, your intuition never stopped speaking, you just stopped believing it was trustworthy. Rebuilding self-trust starts with awareness, the willingness to notice how often you betray yourself in small ways. You say yes when you mean no. You stay quiet when something inside you screams to speak. You apologize for existing a little too brightly. Each of those micro-betrayals tells your subconscious, my truth is inconvenient. And yet, the people who feel truly alive are the ones who have learned to trust their inner signals again. They still feel fear, but they move anyway because they've learned the fear is just a sign of expansion. Think about the last time you ignored your gut and later said, I knew it. That wasn't hindsight. That was self-trust trying to get your attention. The science behind intuition is fascinating. Your body processes sensory data milliseconds before your conscious mind catches up. That's why you sometimes feel off before you can explain why. The gut has its own neural network, the enteric nervous system, connected directly to the brain through the vagus nerve. When you trust your gut, you're literally integrating body intelligence with logic. The problem is, we've been taught to value logic and dismiss feeling. But the most successful leaders, artists, and innovators all share this skill. They make decisions quickly, not recklessly, because they trust their calibration. They know the difference between impulse and intuition. Impulse screams, intuition whispers. Impulse is fueled by fear or desire. Intuition is calm, grounded, and quietly certain. When you begin to listen to that calm certainty, your entire life starts to reorganize. You stop running in circles trying to please everyone. You start making decisions that feel aligned, even if they don't make sense to others. And here's the paradox. The more you trust yourself, the more trustworthy you become. People begin to sense your certainty. You stop radiating doubt. Opportunities flow toward grounded energy. The universe, or if you prefer, the psychology of perception, responds to conviction. When you trust your own decisions, others start to trust you too. That's leadership, and it doesn't require followers, it requires integrity. But trusting yourself doesn't mean you'll always be right. It means you'll be okay even when you're wrong, because you'll know you can learn, adapt, and choose again. Perfection is not the goal, resilience is. When you make a choice that doesn't work out and still stand by your ability to recover, you reinforce the neural pathway of confidence. Each recovery becomes data for your brain. See, I survived that, I can handle uncertainty. Confidence is not the absence of mistakes, it's the memory of survival. So when doubt appears, and it will, pause and ask, have I survived worse? The answer is almost always yes. Now let's get practical. How do you actually build self-trust day by day? It begins with small promises. Keep them ruthlessly. Wake up when you say you will. Write that email when you plan to. Follow through on the workout, even if it's just 10 minutes. Each completed promise is like laying another brick on the foundation of trust. Soon, that foundation becomes so strong that even on your off days, it holds you up. Another method is journaling decisions before you act. Write what you feel pulled toward and why. Seeing your reasoning on paper clarifies intuition from impulse. Then, review your notes later and observe. When did you listen to your gut and how did it go? You'll start to notice a pattern. Your intuition is usually right about direction, even if not every detail. That awareness strengthens the muscle. Also, practice saying no without over-explaining. Self-trust thrives in boundaries. Every time you say no to something misaligned, you say yes to your own energy. At first, it will feel uncomfortable. Your nervous system is used to approval, but over time, peace replaces guilt. That's when you know the rewiring is working. Finally, treat your inner voice with respect. Speak to yourself as you would to someone you love deeply. Replace the harsh self-talk with acknowledgement. Instead of "I'm such an idiot," try "that didn't go how I wanted, but I'm learning." The brain doesn't differentiate much between external and internal speech. Words shape self-image. Talk to yourself kindly and watch how quickly self-trust grows. Remember, trust is a relationship, and like any relationship, it's built through honesty, consistency, and compassion. If you lie to yourself, you'll stop believing yourself. If you keep your word, you'll start believing yourself. It's that simple and that powerful. When you finally trust yourself, something extraordinary happens. The noise in your mind begins to quiet. The constant need for approval fades into the background. You stop waiting for the world to tell you who you are and start deciding for yourself. There's a lightness that returns, the kind you had as a kid before the world told you to be smaller, quieter, safer. That's what self-trust gives you back: freedom. Freedom from overthinking, freedom from comparison, freedom from apology. Because when you trust yourself, you no longer need to perform confidence, you embody it. You stop saying, "I hope this works out," and start saying, "I'll make this work." That shift from hope to belief changes everything. Your body language changes, the way you walk into a room changes. The energy you carry becomes magnetic because authenticity is attractive. You're no longer projecting an image, you're radiating alignment. That's the difference people can feel but can't describe. You ever meet someone who doesn't talk much about their goals, but you can just sense they're going somewhere? That's what self-trust looks like in action: quiet power. It's what makes leaders stand out, artists create boldly, and ordinary people do extraordinary things. The irony is, the world starts to believe in you the moment you stop needing it to. When you stop asking for permission, life stops holding back its opportunities. Because the truth is, the universe, or life, or whatever name you give it, responds to conviction. Clarity pulls in momentum, but trusting yourself doesn't mean every decision will be easy. It means you'll face doubt differently. Instead of asking, "What if I fail?" you'll ask, "What if I learn?" You'll move forward not because you're fearless, but because you've realized fear is just proof that you're stretching into new territory. Every time you choose courage over comfort, your brain rewires a little more for confidence. You are literally teaching your nervous system that uncertainty is safe. Think about that for a moment. You can condition your body to feel safe in the unknown. That's what mastery looks like. It's not control, it's calm in chaos. And when you develop that calm, doors open, relationships shift. You start attracting people and opportunities that match your energy. The friendships that once drained you fade, and new ones arrive that feel effortless. You begin to trust timing. You stop chasing because what's meant for you doesn't require begging, it requires readiness. And self-trust is readiness embodied. Here's the thing: trusting yourself doesn't mean you won't need others. It means you won't lose yourself in others. You'll still seek advice, but it won't define you. You'll still accept feedback, but you won't internalize every critique as truth. You'll listen, consider, and then return home to your own compass. That compass gets stronger the more you use it. Every aligned decision is like tuning an instrument. The more you play, the clearer the sound becomes. Eventually, your inner voice is so familiar, so grounded, that it becomes impossible to ignore. That's the moment you stop looking for signs and start being the sign. People begin to look to you for clarity, not because you have all the answers, but because you've learned how to listen, not just outwardly, but inwardly. And that's leadership. It's not commanding others. It's mastering yourself so deeply that your peace becomes influence. Imagine waking up tomorrow and knowing, truly knowing that your choices, your timing, your path are yours. Imagine what that would do for your anxiety, your indecision, your relationships. The stress of trying to please everyone would dissolve, replaced by a quiet certainty. I can handle what comes next. That's not fantasy. That's what happens when you finally trust yourself. You become unshakable, not because life stops being unpredictable, but because your foundation no longer depends on it being predictable. You stop needing everything to go right because you trust your ability to adapt when it doesn't. That's the power people sense when they say someone has presence. It's not arrogance, it's serenity. It's knowing you don't need to control outcomes to feel safe. You are safe in who you are. Let's make this real. Here's a simple exercise. Tonight, before you sleep, ask yourself, where have I been outsourcing my truth? Maybe it's in your job, your relationship, or your self-worth. Identify one small area where you've been ignoring your own voice, and tomorrow, take one step back toward it. It could be as small as saying no to something that drains you, or as big as finally applying for the thing that excites you. Don't overthink it, just act. That action, no matter how small, is a declaration of trust. Every time you act on your intuition, you're casting a vote for your future self. That's how transformation begins, one internal yes at a time. Over weeks and months, those votes add up. You start seeing evidence of your own strength. You begin to realize you don't need to wait for confidence to act, you gain confidence through acting. That's the paradox that Mel Robbins and so many other great teachers talk about. Confidence is not the cause of action, it's the result of it. Trust leads to action, action leads to evidence, and evidence leads to belief. It's a loop of empowerment. The more you trust yourself, the stronger that loop becomes. And before long, what used to feel terrifying becomes natural. Speaking up, taking chances, saying no, saying yes, living fully. You stop living life like a test and start living it like an experiment. And you realize there was never a right path, only the one you have the courage to walk. As we close, I want you to imagine the version of yourself 1 year from now who has built unshakable self-trust. Picture how they speak, how they move, how they choose. They don't ask, what if I can't? They ask, what if I can? That simple reframe rewires everything. It replaces fear with possibility. And that's where freedom begins, not when everything is certain, but when you trust yourself enough to handle uncertainty. So today, take a breath, stand tall, and say quietly to yourself, I've got this. Not because the world says so, but because deep down you know it's true. You've always known. You just needed to remember you are capable. You are ready, you are trustworthy. And when you live from that truth, life expands in ways you can't yet imagine. So trust yourself fully, fiercely, and unapologetically. This is your permission to begin again, not as someone searching for answers, but as someone who already carries them. This is Evolve with Clarity, reminding you that the greatest relationship you will ever have is the one you build with yourself. When you trust that relationship, everything else aligns. Understand, evolve, thrive. you.